Hello, and welcome to 2-Minute Talk Tips. I'm Bill Monroe. This week's tip, say thanks. When you conduct a successful presentation, people will often tell you that you did a good job. And when they do, it can sometimes feel awkward. Many speakers don't know what to say. Here's a magic phrase that works when that happens. Say, thanks. I appreciate that. Often speakers don't feel comfortable with compliments, and there can be several reasons for this. In my experience, the two most common are 1, that we don't have enough confidence in ourselves to believe the compliment, or 2, we just take the situation for granted. Meaning that for some of us, getting on the stage feels really easy and natural, not like a big deal at all. And often it can feel more natural than, say, mingling at a cocktail reception or making small talk with folks. If we don't think that presenting is a big deal and don't feel that getting on the stage is really difficult, any compliment about that can just seem insincere. But those compliments are sincere. The world is full of people that are amazed that other people can stand up in front of a crowd and speak without losing their lunch. So resist the urge to deflect or minimize a compliment or to say, it was nothing. Declining that compliment, deflecting that compliment is kind of rude. People have taken time from their lives to tell you that you did a good job. They are giving you a gift. It's a personal and beautiful thing. Accept that gift from them with grace. Simply say, thanks. I appreciate that. Stick around. After the break, I'll talk about building a talk that I'm actually delivering later today. Today is October 3rd, and I have a few program notes this week. First, I recently launched a Facebook page for this podcast, so you can now visit 2-Minute Talk Tips on Facebook to like the page. You'll find the older episodes there, and you don't even need to leave your Facebook app to get your latest 2-Minute Talk Tips episodes. Second, you can also find 2-Minute Talk Tips on YouTube. Now you can read along with closed captioning while you listen to each episode. Visit 2minutetalktips.com/YouTube to go right to our channel. Finally, if you liked last week's episode where I talked about what speakers can learn from Star Trek Discovery, you'll definitely want to check out this week's episode of Caffeinated Comics on the Radio Misfits Network. John Clark and I spend an hour talking about the new Star Trek show and debate its awesomeness. Search for Caffeinated Comics in your favorite podcast app or follow the link in the show notes for this episode, number 30, at 2minutetalktips.com. Welcome back. If you've listened to the last several episodes, you know that I am recovering from a stroke. I go to occupational and physical therapy at the local hospital several times a week. A couple of weeks back, my occupational therapist took me down to the basement of the hospital, and I got to play in the auditorium. It was awesome. I wanted to get on a real stage and practice projecting my voice in an environment where the neighbors don't complain that I'm too loud, and to make sure I could still comfortably move around in that space. So I threw together a short talk from bits and pieces that I've been working on and delivered it in that space. The therapist actually liked the ideas I spoke about enough that she asked me to deliver it at an upcoming staff meeting. That meeting is later today. So I spent the weekend doing prep work, refining my message, and figuring out just what I wanted to say in the time allotted. So I put together an outline, pulled more content in, refined my goal, trimmed some stories, and tightened others. In addition to the outlining and prep work that I always talk about, there are a couple of other lessons I pulled from this process. I'm going to talk about those lessons and then include the latest version of this talk in this episode because, well, it is yet one more opportunity to rehearse. The first lesson is to say things out loud to people. Seems obvious, right? Well, the fact is many speakers practice by reviewing their slides at their desk or by running through the material in their car on the way to work. When you say it out loud, though, a couple things happen. First, you start to learn that some word combinations and phrases that look good on paper or sound good in your head are actually tongue twisters and are physically difficult to articulate. You want to discover this during the practice time and not on the stage. The other thing that happens when you give actual life to your words is that you hear and feel when a section is awkward or just doesn't quite work, especially if you have a live person there with you. Sometimes you can only sense this when someone is listening to you and looking back at you as you speak. A couple of episodes back, when I talked about the importance of introducing yourself, I told a story about visualizing a couple of scenes while getting an MRI. The story worked on paper, and in my head it sounded fantastic, and I hope it worked in the podcast as well. The 2 times I told the story that way, with people looking at me though, it didn't quite work. It felt sort of like an out-of-tune note, and I ended up feeling uncomfortable delivering that introduction. I think the story ultimately felt a little too self-indulgent or too precious, like I was trying too hard for some emotional catharsis. So I made some significant changes to the way I tell it. The facts are the same. I just changed the tone and the way I get there. The other lesson concerns the power of Facebook. And I'm not talking about connecting with friends and family and former colleagues and obscure relatives and people that say they went to high school with you, but you still kind of doubt it. Facebook is sure great for all of those things, but it's great for something else too. See, I've been unintentionally workshopping my content with my Facebook friends. As I post the anecdotes and stories of my recovery on Facebook, and people read about my assorted adventures, I'm actually creating an ongoing journal of them. I also get to see which aspects or parts of a story resonate most with folks and which just completely miss the mark. I can now sort of go back through all of my posts on Facebook from over the past summer and pull the stories that I want to add to my talk, and they're right there. And each time I pull one of those stories into a new piece, I actually get better at telling it. And that's just naturally going to happen as you retell and refine the stories you have in your life. So if you're not sure you have anything to talk about, go ahead and check out your own social media posts. You may be a lot more interesting than you think. Enough about the meta-analysis of my talk and the discussion about the process. Let's get to the latest draft. Here it is. You know, I tried to visualize myself watching a storm roll across a lake in Montana, or visualize myself laying in a prison cell on some alien spaceship, and it didn't work. So I spent the next 20 minutes or so shoved into an MRI machine wondering why such an expensive and precise piece of medical equipment was making such horrible grinding and clunking noises as I did my best not to develop claustrophobia. The stroke I had a few hours earlier was about to complicate my life enough. I'm Bill Monroe. I'm a sales trainer, technology evangelist, writer, speaker, host of the 2-Minute Talk Tips podcast, and a stroke survivor. And over the next few minutes, I want to tell you a little bit about pursuing goals. A couple of weeks ago, Stephanie picked up a set of multicolored plastic cones and set up a course for me to navigate. My first thought was, wow, I didn't know they let PTs play with OT toys. Next, since my goal was to walk from one end of the cones to the other without knocking them over, I opted to walk to the left of the cone maze and bypass them altogether. But apparently this was cheating. I just sort of thought of it as my own Kobayashi Maru. Then it was time to do it right. My first time through, I knocked over a few of them until I thought back to the mid-90s, and it wasn't because I needed an Alanis Morissette soundtrack. See, one weekend in 1994, I had nothing to do, so I took a motorcycle class. It was the first and still only time I've ever ridden a motorcycle, so hands off my kidneys and corneas there. One of the things they taught us was the trick for avoiding obstacles in the road, whether those obstacles are debris, pedestrians, or potholes. The trick is don't look at them. If you look at them, you will hit them. Your brain will draw you towards the objects of your attention. The trick is to see the path around the obstacles and to focus on that. Obviously, I don't need to tell you about the importance of neuroplasticity. It's been fascinating for me to learn more about how the brain dedicates more space and neural resources to the things we focus more on and to the activities we do more often. That means the more focus I put on my obstacles, the more space my brain dedicates to those obstacles, and the more it pulls me towards those obstacles. That's not to say the challenges aren't real or that I can completely ignore them. Obviously, I can't use my right hand yet. And I can't walk more than 3 miles per hour yet. And at Daniel's Broiler, I can't cut my own steak yet. Yet is now one of my favorite words. It is a powerful word. And the power of yet is about acknowledging the realities of today and doing what it takes to make things different tomorrow. And when I looked at the path through those cones, instead of at the cones themselves, I was able to put my foot down between them and not knock any over for several laps. Whether it means safely riding a motorcycle, learning to use fingers, navigating through cones, changing a career, or achieving what you want, you will hit what you focus on. And when you go home today and get on your favorite social media platform, make your own declaration. Tell your network something you can't do today, followed by the powerful word yet in big, bold type. Acknowledge your reality today and make your plans to change your world for tomorrow. If you focus on your obstacle, you'll hit your obstacle. If you want to hit your goals, focus on the route around your obstacles. Focus on the path to your goals and hit what you focus on. So what do you think? Can you see how this process played out as I built that talk? Let me know your thoughts in the comments for episode 30 at 2minutetalktips.com. So as we wrap up this week, be grateful for the compliments that you receive from your audience. Focus on your goals, not your obstacles. And as always, don't get best. Get better. And I'll see you next week.